Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadgurum Brahma Vidvaram Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanora Mardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Tvameva Mata cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vidya Dravidam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Gurudeva Deva. Hari Om. We are doing the 11th chapter of Panchadashi that deals with the Brahmanande Yoganandaha. So here classifying Vidyaranya Swami, the author of Panchadashi, classifying the happiness that one can get into three categories across the board, under broad categories. One is Vishayanandaha, that everybody tries to get. Vishayananda means object-oriented happiness. So I want that, and when I get what I want, I am happy. And if I don't get it, I am unhappy also. So most of the time, whenever I get whatever thing I think I required or I want it, if I get it, then I am happy. The stronger the desire, and greater will be the happiness when I get what I want. So this is called Vishayanandaha. Vishaya means object. So object-oriented happiness. That's the first kind. The second kind is what he calls it as the Vijnana Anandaha. Here Vijnana Anandaha means knowledge-oriented happiness. So this is at the intellectual level. The other one is at the sense level. So I want it. So I want good food to satisfy the sense of taste, sense of hearing. I like to hear good music, a sense of sight. I want to see beautiful things. All these are oriented or related to the object oriented. So there are sense involved at the bottom line. Now at the level of intellectual understanding, that means by the knowledge of, here we are talking about objective knowledge. So in the objective knowledge, it's like studying or getting the knowledge about the objective world. That means either in the physics or chemistry or any field that one is studying more and more and becoming super specialist in that. And that knowledge, that because of the satisfaction that one gets, is the happiness that one gets is higher than this happiness that one gets at the sense level. Because the physical, mental and intellectual, the physical happiness at the physical body level that everybody wants to get. At the next level is emotional satisfaction, where emotional satisfaction is superior to the physical satisfactions, because even though physically I am not able to do, but emotionally because of attachments I am ready to sacrifice my body in order to fulfill the emotional satisfaction. So I want to take care of my daughter or my son, and some, in spite of my physical problem, most of the mothers take care of, because the emotional satisfaction is superior to the physical satisfaction. So that's a hierarchy. Even more than that is the intellectual. People are ready to sacrifice their own relationships for an ideal that they want to stand. So when Buddha left his wife, people criticize it, but he is going after a higher knowledge, and that is a higher happiness than the bottom one. But even the higher than that is Brahmanandaha. In fact, Buddha was going for that. And Brahmanandaha is the happiness that I am Brahman, because that is the original happiness. Everything is only reflected happiness. Now here Vidyaranya uses that. Once we know the classification, it uses this information to classify that the sleep, the Ananda that one gets in the deep sleep state is nothing but Brahmananda only. So that's the proposition, and supported by scriptures. It says, why do you say it is Brahmananda? Because there is no object-oriented happiness there. In any object-oriented, there is a triputi or triad, because there is a experiencer, experience and experiencing. That is object-oriented happiness. Whereas in the deep sleep state, there are no triputi there. There is no experiencer, experience and experiencing. Duality is not there, and therefore there is a one homogeneous absence of any duality, but still there is Ananda there. Then who experiences that? And we went through the analysis, and essentially it says it is self-revealing, Swayam Jyotihi. It's because the happiness is there, Brahmananda. You don't need an instrument for it, or you don't need triputi or triad of I am experiencing this Brahmananda, or I am experiencing this deep sleep state. That's not there. While in the deep sleep state, when I get up in the morning, I may say that I slept very well. This is about the past experience. Now I am recollecting that experience. So it is an experience based information. It's not by any means of triad and all that. It is everyone goes through, and I am able to recollect it because I have collected it before. That means I have experienced before, so it is anubhavam. That means I went through it, therefore I can recollect it. I cannot recollect your experiences, but I am recollecting my experience of deep sleep state. I slept very well, I enjoyed, and I have no problem. That means what? No more duality, no triad, but who is experiencing? I am. Who is I am? That Brahman only, because there is no duality whatsoever. So therefore, Vidyaranya establishes that in the deep sleep state, it's only Brahmananda only. Now, how do I recollect that information? Brahmananda, then the Brahman should be able to recollect, not me. So I, which is essentially involved in the mind, a buddhi, which is essentially Vijnanamaya kosha, that's the one that is enjoying all the objective knowledge, including the knowledge of the objective sciences also. That's the one that enjoys all that. That one is now taking rest as it folds with the previous koshas. That means Annamaya folds into Anamaya, Pranamaya folds into Manomaya, Manomaya folds into Vijnanamaya. That Vijnanamaya now folds. Folding means below all other koshas where one is aware of the problems there are all closed. Therefore, there is no duality down the level. There is no emotional duality, and there is no at the level of pranas or at the level of the Annamaya koshas, at the gross body. None of them are there, because they are all perturbations at that level is folded, and that Vijnanamaya is now folding and looking inward, because no more external world that is involved, no objective world is involved. It is folding everything and looking inward, that I want to close the whole shop for temporarily. So when you're closing the whole shop, there is no other duality there. One eki bhavam, one constant awareness of the absence of all dualities. I am getting into that state. That's what explained in the 64th sloka that we just finished in the last talk. It says, Supti Purva Kshane, before the last minute of the deep sleep state coming in, Buddhi Vyuttirya Sukha Bimbita, Buddhi Vruttiryaha, all thoughts about the Buddhi. Here thoughts are internal thoughts, inward thoughts, not introverted thoughts, not about the world, because everything is already folded there. Even all other thoughts inside perturbation, that even internal also is gone. So all the Vritti Bihi, everything is gone, closing. There is no more perturbation of I am a thinker and this is a thought. Even the dream state is going and disappearing. Therefore, Vrittiryaha, Buddhi Vrittiryaha, all the intellectual thoughts at the intellect level, which is related to the objective world. Sukhabimbitaha, and this is essentially in the Chidabhasa, where it's in the reflected mind or being, it says absence of everything itself is being reflected now. So not only the presence of the vrittis, or it's absence of all thoughts, that itself is a modification of the mind. Before that means the buddhi now closed down its shop, and closing down the shop is being illumined, where there is no other thoughts, and that will continue from then on. So it is a reflection of the absence of buddhi vrittis, or buddhi vritti means subject object related thoughts. So what is happening in the deep sleep state? As I enter inwards, and the last thought is gone, and no more thinking at the buddhi level, and that itself is being illumined. It's the absence of the thought. So when I went, I say, can you go and see who is there in that hall? So he says, this fellow goes there and looks around, there's nobody there, and comes back and says, there's nobody there. I said, nobody there? How do you know? So I saw. So the fellow who is seeing there has to be there to see that there's nobody there. Means he is no other objects that he can see is not there. What is there is only a subject without any objectification. The empty hall is there, the empty mind is there, being recognized by the consciousness. So anything that is being aware of means that a reflection of the consciousness has to occur. This is what we studied in terms of how perception occurs. When the thought rises in the mind, it's being illumined by the consciousness, and it gets reflected, and that reflection is called Chidabhasa. And the reflection is the knowledge of the vritti, of the thought. So here the thoughtless state is being reflected, and that's what is being presented here. Sukti supurvachane buddhir vrittiryaha sukamimbita saiva taj bimba sahita liranandam mayastataha. So sa eva tad bimba sahita, that reflected consciousness along with it, that buddhi vijnanamaya kosha, that is folded with the reflected consciousness, that means constant awareness of the absence of all thoughts. That is what is being is called Leenanandamaya Svataha. That's called the Anandamaya Kosha. So that's what happens when the Vijnanamaya Kosha turn inwards is going to be talked about in the next sloka. Antarmukoyamananda mayo brahma sukham stada bhunkte chidbimba yuktabhihi ajnanotpanna vistibha ajnanotpanna vrittibihi together. Antarmukhoya ananda mayo brahma sukham tada bhunkte chidbimba yuktabhihi ajnanotpanna vrittibihi. Yes, it's antarmukha. Antarmukha means introverted thought. That means I want to sleep, I want to close the shop and all. That inward looking at what is there, closing shop, absence of everything is examined. Antarmukha, introverted thought, that is the modification of the intellect to close down the shop. That is what inward looking here. Yaha he who Anandamaya is known as Anandamaya. When the shop is closed, when the Vijnanamaya is closed, but it's open only in a very subtle form, because the mind has to be there for the physiological functions and go on. Even though I'm not conscious of it, the body system is going to be taken care of by the Lord, who is really Aham Vaishwanaro Bhutva Pradinam Deham Asritaha. As a Vaishwanara, I am the one who really runs the show. So that's essentially Pranapana, Vyana, Udana, Samana. All physiological functions are being taken care by the Lord Himself as a life principle, that is through enlivening the equipments, that is mind or the intellect, as Chidabhasa. And that's what is essentially Antarmukha means no more Bahirmukha. It is looking inward, means all the external vrittis are closed, and that closeness of the vrittis itself is now a modification of the mind, and that's called vritti. Here, that is what essentially Anandamaya. It is a full of happiness state. Anandamaya, that means the Anandamaya Kosha, it is the bliss sheath, we call it, where there is no perturbation of subject-object duality. Anandamaya Kosha, Tada, that time, Brahma Sukham, the bliss of Brahman, that means pure consciousness is always there. Brahma Sukham is always there, but the mind now recognizes the Brahma Sukham because of the absence of any other vritti. It is constant illumination of perturbationless mind is called Anandamaya Kosha. And that is recognized by reflection of the consciousness. Reflection of the consciousness in the mind only is called Chidabhasa. So, this Chidbimba Yukta Bihi, that reflection also will be occurring. So, a mind that is folded is being reflected as the Anandamaya Kosha. So, what is Vijnanamaya Kosha? Intellect, when it is active, is called Vijnanamaya Kosha. When intellect has folded along with the previous koshas, is called Anandamaya Kosha. And the folded Buddhi, folded Vijnanamaya, is being illumined or is enlivened by the pure consciousness, by reflection of the consciousness, and that's called Chidabimba. So as long as a subtle body is there, Chidabhasa will be there. That means reflection will be there. Whether it's agitated mind or a quiet mind, there will be a reflection, and that's how the knowledge of the mind takes place, by the reflection of consciousness. This we examined in the light theory. When we say in the physics wise, we can see the presence of any object only when it reflects the light. Because if I say, is a chair there, how do you know? Because I can see. How can you see? Because the light is falling on the chair, getting reflected by the chair and reaching my retina, forming an image. If there is no light at all, pitch dark room, I cannot say there is a chair there. So in the same way, as though it is covering, the whole world is being covered, and at that time there is no perturbation of anything, and that is being reflected as the knowledge. So how do you know that it's dark? Pitch darkness is there in the whole room. I cannot see anything. But one thing is, how do you know that there is a dark? This I can see. You said just now you cannot see anything. So I can see that I cannot see. That means I am able to see, understand the absence of everything else, and that itself is a knowledge. I can see that there are no thoughts in the mind. I can see, that means I am conscious of the absence of subject-object duality. Who is that I? Not the subject. If there is a subject, there is an object there. That therefore, it is not a triad type, a triputi type. It is pure awareness of that, recognized by the folded mind itself, because the Vijnanamaya Kosha in the folded is subtle enough to recognize that. At the same, therefore it reports later when he gets up that I slept very well, I was happy because there is no more suffering. Absence of duality is the happiness there. And that knowledge of the absence of subject-object duality is the ignorance, that is the Tula Vidya. that is also understood also. So essentially, by reflection of the consciousness, there is a kosha has been recognized, and that is called Anandamaya kosha. So, Bhumte chid bimba yukta bihi ajnana utpanna vritti bihi. So, ajnana utpanna vritti bihi. So, there is a rise of the ajnanam, rise of ignorance is there. So how can you rise ignorance? It is awareness of the ignorance. So when the pitch dark room is there, there is a rise of darkness is there. Darkness is opposite of light, or darkness is a positive quantity? It's an interesting information to analyze. Say darkness is, I know I can see the darkness, right? When the pitch dark room, I know it is dark. So how do you know it is dark? Because I can see. How can you see? Because I cannot see anything else. As this is covered, darkness is covering, that I can see. That means I can illumine the darkness, and the illumining can illumine the darkness without lighting it. That itself is called antarmukhi. It is internal light can light it. The ajnanam, the ignorance also is known. The same way darkness is known. Is there any world now? When it is folded, without the mind, presence of the existence of the world cannot be established. When it's pitch dark room, we said, I cannot say whether the chair is there or not. It may be there, it may not be there. So either the presence or the absence of a chair cannot be established by without the presence of the knowledge of its existence. Knowledge occurs through pramana. But in the case of the Anandamaya kosha, you don't need any pramana to know that I slept very well, because it is self-revealing. That's what the chapter started, that there is no triad is required, and it says Antarmukho Anandamayaha. So Brahma Sukham Tada Bhumte Chidbimba Yukta Bihi Ajnana Utpanna Vritti Bihi. So there are, in the deep sleep state, what happened? The mind is closed, and therefore everything is closing. That closing off is the modification of the mind. So that's called vritti now. And in the vritti, there is no subject-object duality. So the ignorance of everything, because there is no subject-object duality. So when the darkness is covering the whole thing, then the ignorance of the whole world is there. So ignorance of the whole world is expressed in terms of the darkness covering it. In the same way, the sleep is covering it, and that is essentially avarna. Nidra Shakti is covering the whole world, or the operation of other, the Ajnanamaya, Manomaya, and Pranamaya, and Annamaya koshas. So but that is being reflected. The absence of the thought subject-object is being deflected, and that is essentially Thula Vidya, the ignorance of objective world, and therefore ignorance of the everything else, and that is called Ajnanam. So when I say I do not know anything, that means I have no knowledge of anything. That means objective knowledge is not there. And since the objective knowledge arises along with the subject also, whenever I see a chair, automatically I know this is a chair, I know this is a pot. So this is a pot is objective called vritti jnanam, and spontaneously there is another thought that comes is, I am a owner of this thought. I know this is this pot, I know that, I know this. So I am owning the thought. That's called essentially ahankara thought, or aham vritti also spontaneously raises, provided there is idam vritti. This thought coming, and therefore I thought, I know this also comes spontaneously. Whereas in the case of deep sleep state, there is no idam thoughts, therefore there is no spontaneous rise of the ownership thought that I know this is because they know this. So when there is a this thought only, I thought comes. When there is no this thought, then I thought also will not be there. So that's essentially absence of the ownership thought, which is essentially ahankara thought, will not be there. That's what being discussed in the next sloka. So this is called akhanda akara ajnana vrittihi. So I do not know anything here. So here says the perception of this any world is not there. So say interesting thing is if you apply this, say, do you know this object? Yeah, I know this is a chair. So I am perceiving an object outside and say this is a chair, and when I say this is a chair, there are three things happening. One is perception of the chair through the process of the indriyas, I can see eyesight and all that, and the mind operating for me to see, and also that's called the cognition of the chair, and there's a recognition by going into the memory and says the one which has the attributes of this is called chair. So I say, hey, this is a chair, this is a table, spontaneously occurring when I recognize the object here. Suppose I say, do you see Gaga Boo here? What? Gaga Boo. What's Gaga Boo? I don't know what's Gaga Boo. Do you see it? If I don't know, if you don't know, how can I see anything? So for me to say, what are the attributes of Gaga Boo? Oh, it is this, like this. If I tell, that means I am conscious of how Gaga Boo looks like. Now you become conscious of when I say, yeah, I can see an object like that. Oh, that's called Gaga Boo. I know. Suppose there is no Gaga Boo object and said, can you see a Gaga Boo? Says, I have no knowledge of Gaga Boo, I cannot see, so there is no subject-object duality even when my operation, because that particular object is not being seen, no pramana operating for me to recognize the object. So in the case of deep sleep state, is there a world? I cannot see the world because it's covered. So existence or non-existence of the world cannot be established in the deep sleep state. You cannot say the world is not there. You cannot say world is there. Oh, somebody else can say world is there. But I don't see that person also. So even he is not there. So how can you say anything at all? So from my point, the world is completely, is as though disappears, because there is no cognition of the world. There is no pramana cannot operate to know whether it is there. It's called indeterminate or anirvachaniyam. That's a word being used by Advaita Vedanta in a very way. So akhandakara ajnana vrittihi, constant without differentiating what kind of ignorance it is. It's ignorance of chemistry or ignorance of physics or ignorance of the world or ignorance of what? Ignorance period. Okay, there is no divisions in the ignorance there. Here I can say, I know this, but I don't know that. I know chemistry, but I don't know physics. So I'm differentiating the ignorance of physics compared to ignorance of chemistry. So I don't have the ignorance of chemistry, but I have ignorance of physics. So they're differentiable. That means khandanam is there. Whereas in the deep sleep state, it is akhanda akara ajnana vrittihi. Absence, continuous absence of the particularity of any knowledge. Therefore, I don't know this, I don't know anything because of the lack of the instruments to know. Not the things are not there or not, we don't know. We need the instruments, we need the subject, we need the instruments, and we need the connection between instruments and the subject and the object for the knowledge to take place. And here the instruments themselves are folded, therefore the existence of objects cannot be established. Only thing is, the subject I am is what? Seeing what? Seeing the absence of subject-object duality. So that is essentially being presented here as akhanda akara ajnana vrittihi. So that is Ijnanamaya kosha folds into Anandamaya, and that is the bliss of the absolute only will be there. So we established certain things here. So any Ananda comes from the reflection of the consciousness in that. And it becomes Ananda only when the mind is calm and quiet. So I can get that calm, quiet state either by indulging in the objects, Then whenever I indulge and get what I want, then in those moments the mind and the intellect are folded as though quote unquote is serene, and as though looks folded, and the consciousness beaming through the absence of perturbations in that state is recognized as a happy moment. And intellect comes in, then say I am happy because of that. Because when you are enjoying anything, you don't say I am enjoying because. When you make a statement I am enjoying, because you are not enjoying at that moment, the mind is quiet. Therefore any Ananda is coming from the reflection of pure consciousness only when the mind is calm and quiet. So you need the mind and you need a reflection of the reflection will be there because the mind is there and consciousness is there. So Chidabhada is there as a reflection, and the mind, quiet state of mind is called happy state. And so any Ananda is due to only Brahmananda only. But when I have constant, continuous, perturbationless mind is there, then that is deep sleep state, because there is no subject-object duality. So that becomes Akhanda Akara Ajnana Vritti, because there is absence of duality. This Ajnana is called Thula Vidya. It's not Ajnana of Brahman only, but it's Thula Vidya of the mind. So how does the Jnani sleeps? It's a very interesting question. How does a Jnani sleep? Jnani is the one we are talking about. How does he sleep? Okay, before that, how does a chemistry Jnani sleeps? So when chemistry Jnani sleeps, means like a chemistry professor sleeps, how does he sleep? He also has Akhandakara Jnana Vritti there in the deep sleep state. That includes the knowledge of the chemistry also. He is a professor in chemistry. What is there is the knowledge of the chemistry is folded, so therefore it cannot express itself. So what happens where he sleeps as the subject-object duality. I am a knower of chemistry, and this is chemistry knowledge is also folded, because the object is folded. Vijnanamaya kosha is folded. The subject knower is also folded. So chemistry professor doesn't know that he knows chemistry in the deep sleep state. If he says I know chemistry, that means he is not sleeping. So obviously a Thula Vidya, any objective knowledge is already folded. If he is a Jnani, that means he has gained the knowledge of the Mula Vidya is gone. That means he knows I am Brahmasmi. How does he sleep? He also sleeps with the knowledge of Aham Brahmasmi, yet all other objective knowledge is also folded. So he also sleeps with the Ajnana of the Thula Avidya. Thula Avidya will be still covering. Only doesn't cover is Aham Brahmasmi. Where does it cover? It is folded in the mind itself. So he sleeps. When he sleeps, he doesn't say I am a Jnani there also. He sleeps that also, because his original nature itself is folded. So we have to be very careful in terms of what is folded, how does Jnani sleeps and how Ajnani sleeps. And everybody sleeps where everybody objective understanding, and this fact proves that it is the mind that requires the Brahma Vidya only, because that mind is also folded. So both Thula Vidya and the Mula Vidya both are folded. Mula Vidya folded, therefore Mula Jnanam is there, and Thula Vidya, a particular Jnanam may be there depending upon his studies, and all that will be folded, and that is the state in the deep sleep state. So we'll go into the next sloka in the next talk. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.